So moving on to the next tab, well, we now need to fill in the salaries for our director and our tech. So we'll say, let's say the director makes $100,000 a year. Ooh, or $1 million. And then our techs both make, let's say 45 for one, and we'll say 52 for another. You'll just make sure you put their salaries here. And then here's a box. We have the fringe rate for A&P. That was the old fringe rate. We're going to change it to 35.6 is the fringe rate for this year. Or not. Oh, thanks. So then that way your fringe rates are accurate. Okay. And just as a reminder, you want to put the full salary for the person, because you don't want to adjust it by, well, they're only 50% working for the core, because that was taken into consideration on the effort on the tab before. If they're only 50% working on the core, that's where you would have put 50% here. Okay. So put the full salaries here. So then it will break out based on the percentages that you put on the previous tab. It'll break out the salary based on each service line. So then, whoops. I don't know why that is showing a reference. So this is supposed to break down your your direct salaries for each service line. So your admin is here, and that gets tied in later. And then it'll say, what is your percent tied to each service line? I'm not going to fix those references because those don't really carry forward. That's kind of like for your knowledge. I'll fix them when I send you the spreadsheet, but that's not going to carry forward into the next spreadsheets. So then, does everyone understand what that was doing? So you're taking the salaries and putting it towards each service line. So now you need to break up your supplies and equipment under $5,000, so non-capital equipment, any supplies, any travel, any non-personnel expense that isn't part of your service contract. Service contracts are going to be done here on the next tab. So what are any of your non-personnel expenses? And the way that it does this is based on a percent of your actual. So if you have, before you do your fees, you do your budget. So in your budget, we budgeted for $15,000 in non-capital equipment, and we're going to bill for $150,000 in supplies. That's how much supplies we're going to buy, and we have budgeted. For services, what are our other purchase services? Do we use other cores to help facilitate our work? Do we do purchases outside the university? And a lot of cores do. A lot of cores do partner with each other. So we'll say $25,000 in there. And if you have a travel budget, we like to, if the core is breaking even and they have the money for travel, and if the travel is specifically related to helping develop the core or helping with customers, et cetera, we do allow travel on our shared resources and for them to build a budget for that in. They can't just pick, it's not a given set in stone ability to travel, but they can travel if it's warranted. Questions on that? Okay, so we'll say we're going to put a $2,000 travel budget in here. Now we break out by percent each of these service lines. Oh, and I put a extra thing in there. Oops, I only have 3 service lines, so make sure it's all even. Oh, I meant that to be 30. So it should tell me. Why is it not taking my 30%? Okay, so now you break up the expenses based on the service line. And that's it for this tab. Okay? If you wanted to, you could add more rows to this. If you're like, oh, but we buy this specific thing, so we need to break that out. By all means, you can add more rows because this is just going to come up with an aggregate cost to build in later. So they know what are your non-personnel expenses for each service line. Yeah. Down at the end where, like on the previous tab where it should have added everything up, it adds everything up for you here.